What an incredible match between Conor McGregor and Pereira. Now, a lot of people were not expecting the outcome of today's match. Today's UFC 257 match was incredible. And the spectators, the referees, everyone involved in this match was surprised with the outcome. Now, this is given from the fact that the last time that Pereira and Conor McGregor faced off was 6 years ago, and Conor McGregor beat Pereira by TKO, technical knockout, in 106 seconds into their first ever fight. Now, this was a complete turnaround today. Now, what makes this all the more impressive is that things lined up in Pereira's favour. Now, Conor McGregor is a man who is sitting on 22 wins and 5 losses. 19 have been knockouts. Dustin Pereira is sitting on 27 wins and 6 losses. But Conor McGregor, 4 of those 5 losses have been from submissions. So everything worked out, I think, in favour of Pereira, and I'm going to get into it and why I think what pre-decided this matchup from the start. All right, so to see Conor McGregor technically knocked out in the second round of their fight today in this UFC event hosted in Abu Dhabi was impressive. These two fighters now stand at 1 win each. So I think we can safely assume these guys are going to end up fighting each other again. I think it's inevitable that we'll see a matchup to really decide who is the greatest amongst these two. Now, back in 2019, Pereira won the lightweight UFC title, only to be beaten by Khabib that same year. It was unfortunate. But now, given that Pereira has beat one of the greatest in the UFC, in the competition, I think now we can expect Pereira to have to face Michael Chandler. And I think this is the next step. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, what's next for Conor McGregor? Well, I can tell you now that Conor McGregor is only going to ramp himself up, and I'm going to tell you why I think he's going to learn a lot from this and come back hard and heavy and harder to beat. Because Conor McGregor really had some downtime with the UFC. He spent a year of inactivity and non-involvement really with the sport. He had a disagreement with the UFC promotional company, and COVID came along and really threw a spanner into the works. So Conor McGregor is a person who treats the sport as an art form, someone who dedicates his life to training. And before 2019, Conor McGregor was training nearly every single day. Now, this sport requires, you have to start off with 4 or 5 years of consistent training just to make it in the UFC. You have to be prepared to train 2 to 4 days a week. And some UFC fighters, as we've seen, like with fighters like Anderson Silva, training every single day. Now, Conor McGregor was someone who dedicated his life up until about 2019 at some point, training every single day just about. And not only that, having a very specific type of dietary intake and specific carb types played a big role in his nutritional requirements. And he had an ex-Navy Marine helping him with his nutrition. He had a lot of people behind him. It's a team that is required to achieve results in the UFC. Not only the training, the dietary requirements are a big part of it. Now, Conor McGregor had a very individualized and optimized kind of nutritional diet going, and he had a very personal and individualized training regime that was specific to his genetic profile. Now, this is a big thing that plays a role in things. Now, as we look, 2019 came, so did COVID, and Conor McGregor took some time out from the UFC and dropped off on his intense training, and that's where this probably affected the outcome from today, because to be the world reigning champ, to be one of the best, to be the most optimal and most performing and unbeatable in this sport, you have to have intense training that is consistent, and consistency is the key. You cannot slack off in this sport. And I think that is why this was set up for Pereira to really take McGregor out. And Pereira knew his opponent well, had studied his opponent well, looked for weaknesses, and really set upon going hard, taking a beating from Conor McGregor in the first round, as well as dishing it out. And, the series of blows to Conor McGregor's head and face, and then a few blows to Conor McGregor's hip, really had Conor McGregor come unstuck. His leg seized up. He was done in a very short amount of time. He just couldn't keep up. And I think this is where we started to see Conor McGregor really fall apart, because of the lack of discipline and training for this fight. And it takes a lot of discipline and training and a huge lifestyle commitment. And I don't think that consistency was maintained. And had the consistency been maintained in 2019, I think the outcome of this fight would have been very different. But I think that's where things went wrong. It was amazing to see. This is why people pay a lot of money to see this sport, to sit in the crowd. And this was the first, this event was amazing because they actually allowed people to sit in the crowd, given the fact that coronavirus has dampened a lot of spectator sports. A select number of people were allowed to sit in live and watch this main event. It's interesting, but now we can safely assume that Conor McGregor is going to learn from this. And he's already stated that he's not giving up. He's going to come back more vicious than ever. And I think he'll put this loss far behind him, and he's going to be very hard to beat, because now he is resolute in training and getting back to where he used to be with his physicality. So I think there's quite a few options on the table for Conor McGregor now, given that Jake Paul wants to fight McGregor, and Jake Paul is sitting on 2 wins and 0 losses. This could be a big moneymaker for both of them. And Conor McGregor is, although he is 32 years old, he is looking at ramping up how much money he makes in this sport before he retires. And I think that he is going to get himself in the best shape ever and dominate for the next 2 or 3 years and then retire, because the average age is usually for, a sport that requires so much from you, 35 years of age is usually a good number to retire at. So I see Conor McGregor going hard, training hard to get results for the next 2 to 3 years, maybe 4 years, and really not suffering another loss like this. I think he is going to go out in a blaze of glory when he retires, and I don't think he's going to let this match define his career. I think he's going to put this behind him, and he's going to come out and beat every opponent he faces now. He is still contracted for 4 more fights to the UFC, so best believe you're going to see him fight at least 4 more times. And I think that he is going to train hard for his next opponent, and his next opponent is going to get obliterated. I'd put money on it. I would almost say that you can guarantee that he is going to accept the fight with Floyd Mayweather, a rematch, because they still have the rematch option on the table, and I think that is going to go ahead as well. So Conor McGregor is going to train intensely for that next fight. He's going to rematch Floyd Mayweather. You know, as a lot of you may know, that in 2017, Floyd, really went hard. And, the outcome of that fight, a lot of people say, well, a rematch is called for given the fact that, there's got to be a more definitive outcome to Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor fighting. So I think the fans want to see someone get knocked out. So we're going to see a rematch, and then I think that is going to be officially announced in the next week, if it's not announced in the next day or so. So that's my take on this situation. And I think that if Jake Paul fights Conor McGregor, that it's going to be the first loss that Jake Paul takes. I think Conor McGregor is going to be very hard to beat. And I think Jake Paul is going to be on the receiving end of this comeback and attempt to save face. And I think it's going to be a very nasty and vicious UFC fight when Jake Paul takes on Conor McGregor, if it goes ahead, which I think it will, given that, the 4-match contract that Conor McGregor still has to the UFC, and given that the UFC goes with the option that generates the most money. This is impressive. It was amazing. I don't know, what do you think? Let me know what you think about the fight. Who do you see Conor McGregor facing next? Do you think that he is going to learn from this and be now unstoppable and get back to where he was with his own physical endurance and capabilities? Because really today did not do justice to the man that is one of the greatest competitive fighters in the UFC ever. Anyway, that's my take on it. I'm MC Rapology. Let me know what you think. Be sure to sub to the channel. An impressive fight, no doubt. We're going to see more from Conor McGregor, and this is just the beginning. So, big ups. Be sure to share, like, sub. You know the deal. Peace.